Ear splitting before match point. Londell. Chin. Turn back and Purdue wins.
Setting up Peterson again. Block! Boilermakers do it! They survived the upset with a 3-set run to win in 5 and advance to the Sweet 16 for the 3rd consecutive year.
The block by Purdue, and the Boilermakers are moving on!
The Dig City Podcast is presented by Franciscan Health Sports Medicine, inspiring health. Franciscan is the official medical services provider of Purdue Athletics. Welcome back to the Dig City Podcast. I'm Cory Palm with head coach Dave Shondell. Coach, we'll get into the week that was for the Boilermakers and preview upcoming action. First, I wanted to start with sort of the national scene. Crazy week in college volleyball. We saw undefeated Texas, who looked like, and maybe still is, the juggernaut, among the best teams in the land, if not the best team in the land. I know you've been clear on your thoughts on their talent this year. They fell to Iowa State. A couple more, other upsets throughout the bit of a shakeup in the poll this week, and it's more of the same in that top competition, really, really good action, and teams ripe for upsets.
Well, I think that Iowa State really pulled the biggest upset of the season, but give Iowa State a little more respect. Christy Johnson's had a really good program there for a long, long time, and going into places like Iowa State is never going to be easy. Like going to Michigan or Michigan State or Maryland or Illinois, places like that. It's hard to go in there and win, but that was a great win for Iowa State. And you're right, I felt like Texas was the team to beat. I think everybody in the country felt like that. And I don't think they've fallen off the cliff right now. I think that they'll probably learn from that and get better. But it's just really difficult in the world of college athletics to have your kids play at the top of their game every single night. And when you look at those scores from Iowa State, the sets that Texas won were like 25-12.
Yeah.
The ones they lost were 2-pointers. But that's what's unique about volleyball is you got all these different sets, and you can regroup and find a way to recover, and that's exactly what Iowa State did. But then Louisville losing at Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's a team that's getting better and very well coached and with good talent. Louisville playing without DeBeer, who's one of the best outside hitters in that league and one of the best outside hitters in the country. She's been out for about 10 matches, and so they've been doing fine up until they went to Pitt, and then I think it was a 5-setter that they lost out there at Pittsburgh. Louisville dropped, I think, to maybe 5th in the poll, which or maybe 4th.
Yep, down to 4th. Yeah. They're still hanging on to a first-place vote.
Yeah. But I think they're still very, very dangerous once they get DeBeer back. That gives them a 6 rotation offensive player that they don't have. And I know that they'll be dangerous again. But San Diego climbed up another spot. They're not losing to anybody in their league. And their league's not bad.
Right.
The league has got some good teams in it. San Diego, I think, has gone 5 sets with 3 or 4 different teams with the one loss that they have to Louisville. But it's just hard to really gauge how good they are. And I said, I think on the show last week or the week before, I don't think they have the size and physicality that some of the teams in the country have. They have a tough time, I think, matching up with Nebraska, Wisconsin, Texas, even Minnesota. Doesn't mean they can't beat them, because I think that they've got skill. They've got skilled players. They've got the great setter, Blossom, that was at Penn State a year ago. They've got a transfer, actually, I think, from Indiana that's doing a great job for them right now, Edwards. So they've got some good players, and it'll be interesting to see just how this whole thing plays out down the stretch.
For sure. San Diego just swept BYU. They haven't dropped a set, actually, since September 24th. Yeah. So they're on quite a roll.
And BYU is not the same team they were a year ago.
Right.
They've continued to lose some matches. I think that they'll be a tough team in the tournament, but I don't think they're quite the talent that they had a year ago. But no, the national scene is interesting. I still feel like there's 7 or 8, maybe 9 teams that are really ahead of the rest.
Yeah.
And you've got this group from 10 through 30 that it's a free-for-all. And actually beyond that, I look at our upcoming schedule, and we have all these teams that aren't getting a ton of credit, but they're really, really good. And I'm talking about Michigan, I'm talking about Northwestern is got to be the anomaly. Northwestern has beaten Minnesota, they've beaten Washington, they've beaten Colorado. They went out and swept Maryland at their place last week, and yet they're not getting hardly any mention whatsoever in the poll. But they're loaded with talent, and whenever you have Timmy Thomas on your team, you've got one of the best volleyball athletes in the country. And right now, Timmy was just most recently the Offensive Player of the Week in the Big Ten Conference. So she's starting to play with some real purpose as well. So many really good teams, and we'll talk about the upcoming schedule a little bit. But I think that this is going to be a fun finish for the fans, because it's just a crapshoot down the stretch, and not just in our league, but in a lot of different leagues.
Absolutely. We have reached the halfway point of the conference season. You guys had, I know you called it last week, probably the roughest week on your schedule. You knew it was going to be, at the outset, and with Nebraska here, and then traveling, not on a short rest, but on a couple days to Minnesota to play a very good Gopher team who was looking for
I think what I mean by that was that of all the weeks, these were the two best teams back to back that we're going to play. Whenever you play Nebraska and Minnesota, those are two pretty good opponents. And quite frankly, we played really well against Minnesota. Yeah. I thought it was one of our 2 or 3 best matches of the season. Our effort at Minnesota just wasn't good enough. We blew the first set. We were up, I think, 22-17, something like that in the first set. Got in a tough rotation. They got some momentum, and really they made plays. When you look at it, go back and look at the set. They made some plays down the stretch that won that particular set. We come back and pretty much controlled the entire second set until the end. They tried to do the same thing they did in the first set. Fortunately, Raven got up and blocked the ball to close the deal there. And then we had 2 more sets that were close. They were all 25-21, 25-20, something like that. But I thought we played well. It was a positive sign for our team. The Nebraska match, they were really good that night. Probably the best team that we have played this season on that night. I don't know the number 1 team in the country, because I think it's just a kind of a mashed potato situation there toward the top. But they were really good that night. And I think a lot of that was our offense was not very good. I'm putting some of that on ourselves, that we didn't play well. We weren't very sharp. I didn't think we were that sharp. A couple days in practice, at least some individuals, and then that showed in that match against Nebraska. But I think we cured some of those things before we went to Minnesota, and then so far this week we've been pretty good in the times we've been in the gym.
I was going to ask that. The team seems pretty dialed in, seems focused this week.
Oh, we have to be, Cory, because we have a job to do. We have to win a certain number of matches to make this NCAA tournament, and trust me, that is not a given. I've been in this league long enough, in this situation long enough to know you have to produce.
Right.
And our players know that, and we've got good kids, we've got good talent, we've got focused leadership, but so does just about every team in our league. So every time we step on the floor from now till the end of the season, I believe we're going to play in matches that we can win or matches we can lose. I mean, that's the caliber of the competition that we're going to play. Certainly when you go to Nebraska, that's going to be a really tough match to expect to win, but I think we have the talent to go to Nebraska and win. And no matter who you're going to play, they've got a chance to beat you. The competition. And I talked maybe a little bit about this last time. Some of these coaches that have just come in for the first time, you've got Michigan State and Iowa, who I think their records aren't great, but they're performing really well.
Right.
They're in the early stages of building a program. There's still excitement. The expectations weren't super high. So they're just trying to get better every day and try to change culture, and they're doing that at both those places. They picked the right coaches to come in and do that. And then you've got Indiana, who's won 3 in a row, including going to Michigan and beating the Wolverines, who were ranked in the top 25 at that time. So just everywhere you go, there's really good teams. Everybody right now is fighting for something. At some seasons at this point in time, people are starting to drift away.
Right.
All right, you're not seeing that right now. Everybody has a pulse. and everybody still thinks that they got a chance to make some noise and have a really good season. Whether that means make the NCAA tournament, or whether that means get better so we're ready for the following year, because they're in the, like I said, the infant stages of building the program.
Mm-hmm. You said something interesting about Minnesota just a minute ago, that, you know, coming down the stretch in the first set, you know, we made some mistakes, but they made some plays. That's one thing that I feel like as sports fans and certainly as, you know, participants and coaches, we don't often, maybe not enough, give credit to the other team. Yeah. Like you focus so much on your mistakes. Oh, if we'd have done this better. Oh, if we would have maybe tried this sub or this combination or run this set. Well, the other team's on scholarship too, and they're trying to make plays also, and they're very good.
Yeah, it's easy for fans and coaches to be critical when the wheels start to fall off. But when the wheels fall off, it doesn't necessarily mean you're giving the match away. Sometimes it does. But other times it's just, you know, the other team. Volleyball's a momentum sport. Everybody that has ever watched a volleyball match understands it. It's a momentum sport. So when a team starts to get that mo on their back, they play at a higher level than what they may have been playing before. And the other team starts to feel some of that pressure. Basketball's a similar game. I've been in Mackey Arena and I've watched strange things happen on both sides. Where remember the Iowa match, where the Iowa game when we had like a 20-some point lead in the first game.
Couldn't miss from three.
At halftime, yep. Everybody went crazy. We thought it was the greatest day in the world. And then Iowa just destroys us in the second half because things started going very well for them. So it happens in all levels of competition in all sports. But the really tough teams with great maturity don't let it happen as often. And that's what you hope that you're going to develop within your team.
6-4 in the Big Ten at the halfway point. That is good for 1, 2, 3, 4. Tied for 5th with Penn State. You are 15-5 overall. As we look ahead to the second half of the conference slate, you know, you'll head to Northwestern this Friday night and then welcome Indiana for the Monon Spike match on Sunday. We'll preview those two matches when we get back. The Dig City podcast is presented by Franciscan Health Sports Medicine, inspiring health. Franciscan is the official medical services provider of Purdue Athletics. Now back to the show. So you've talked a lot about Northwestern, you know, over the course of the last couple of years, really, and how they're trending in the right direction. It seems like they're finally getting to the point where things are falling into place a little bit more than in years past. Tell us about the Wildcats.
Well, I looked at the roster yesterday as I was putting some stuff up on the board, and they have 7 or 8 seniors or grad students on their team right now, many of which have been in the lineup for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. And they're led by Tammy Thomas, that is one of the best athletes in the game. And but they've been bolstered by a freshman out of Cleveland that plays in the opposite position and is doing a great job for them. A 5th-year player in the other left side spot that plays opposite Timmy. Lesiak, who's another really good athlete. Both are middles. One's a senior, one's a junior, that are athletic, go off 1, go off 2. They're really, really good. Their setting situation has been a little bit in limbo because their starting setter has been out for the last maybe 2 weeks. She may very well be back on Friday night. We anticipate that she will be. But the other setter's a freshman out of California that's done a really, really nice job. It's a good athlete, was highly recruited. And then their backcourt's good. A couple people right out of the Muncie, Indiana area that are playing really well for them. Meg Miller and Stinson. Stinson's a sophomore. Miller is a 5th-year kid that was at Nebraska for a long time before transferring there. So they're solid. This is a year that they've been waiting for a long time at Northwestern. I think I mentioned they've got 3 or 4 really good wins already, you know, on their docket, talking about top 25 tier teams. Yep. So this is a really good team for Northwestern. I think, you know, we match up fairly well together. And, I mean, I think that we both have good size. We both have enough experience that it should be a really good match. We only play the Wildcats one time this year, and it just happens to be up in Evanston. But I think that it's going to be a really big match for both teams. You know, we look at where we know our back's against the wall right now. Mm-hmm. We feel like our back's against the wall. Well, we're in a better position than a lot of teams in the league. Right, true. So imagine how they feel, okay, or you know, some of the other teams that they know that you have to win matches. You have to play well. You have to get this thing really, really rolling right now. If your hope is to make the NCAA tournament, which is not a given for anybody right now in the bottom 8 teams of our league.
Right. Northwestern 4-6, 15-7 overall. Like you said, some really good resume wins, and looking for a handful of other matches that I'm sure they feel are very winnable down the stretch, trying to make that push for the postseason. Then you return home on Sunday to take on the Hoosiers, who a week ago took you to the limit down in Bloomington. I know they're a different team than we've seen from Indiana recently. I know they're one of the best serving teams in the country. What particular challenge do they provide?
Well, I think one thing that needs to be made clear is I haven't seen a lot of bad Indiana teams, just being honest. The records of the last few years haven't been as, what they are excited about it in Bloomington, and we've won our fair share against them, but none have been easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rivalry match. It's like when Jeff Brown takes the field against Indiana in football this year. You think that's going to be easy? It's just not going to be easy.
Yep.
And no matter what sport it is. But this is an Indiana team that is playing with a lot of confidence right now. They have a level of toughness on this team that maybe they haven't had as much of in the past. And we escaped Bloomington with a win that we very easily could have lost just a couple, like you mentioned, just not even 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And now they've won 3 in a row since then, including the win at Michigan, where they played a terrific match against a team that I think is clearly a top 25 talented team in Ann Arbor. But we know we'll have our hands full with both these teams, and they're chomping at the bit, Indiana, to come back and try to make a statement against our team. So we've got to be ready. Again, I'm happy that there's a day in between. Both of us get a rest after the Friday match to get ready to play on Sunday. But man, we're going to need that crowd here, and we need the crowd at both places. I mean,
yeah.
we go to Northwestern, we always draw really, really well. There's a huge Purdue contingency up there that we need to get that kind of a crowd rocking and rolling up there and give us some help, have our back. And then when we come here on Sunday, a day where there hasn't been a lot of athletics on campus because football has a bye week,
yep.
I'm hoping that we'll get people out to come out and support us, and that'll be a really big match for this team that's looking for wins.
Absolutely. Indiana 12-10 overall, but 5-5 in the Big Ten. Like you said, a couple straight wins. They haven't lost since that match that we took care of business in 5 down in Bloomington. So they're nipping at your heels in the Big Ten standings. And again, looking for a resume bolster. One last thing I wanted to ask you about is, the depth of your club this year has been a real strength. It certainly was early in figuring out where pieces fit best, and I know you've talked about, Lourdes Myers quite a bit. You've talked about some players that maybe don't get as many, rotations or don't get in as often as they deserve, just because that's the nature of the game.
Yeah.
When you're in the thick of it, in the middle of conference play, playing in Nebraska or Minnesota or in Indiana, how much do you think about if things are going a little sideways, making a switch? How often does that cross your mind? Is that an easy decision in match? Is it an agonizing one?
It's tough for younger players to get into matches like that because you're just not sure exactly how they will react to being in that level of competition. You see them in practice, and I use Emily Rastovsky as an example. Emily went from a year ago when she was a redshirt freshman, where she was probably good 1 out of every 3 days that she could play at this level. This year it's 2 out of every 3 days. Even though Lourdes has been here for this is her 3rd season. First season she was hurt and couldn't practice, so she's really just in her 2nd season, and she's been tremendous in practices. But you've also got players playing in front of them that have a lot of experience.
Right.
When you look at Rastovsky, she's got Emma Ellis, Maddie Cook, Maddie Chin, 3 players that have been on that floor a lot, and it's just hard to say, okay, we need to make that change. The biggest issue is in volleyball, and partially this is because we're using 2 setters, and that's chewing some subs up. We got 2 defensive specialists that we're playing that are doing a great job. That chews some subs up.
Yeah.
You just don't have the luxury to see, well, let me run Lourdes in here for one rotation across there and see how she's going to do, because it eats up at least 1 sub and maybe 2 if you take her back out, okay, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But you saw Lourdes against I think it was Nebraska.
Yep, she came in.
Where we did make that change that you're talking about. It was the right time, and we got her in there. She got a 1 swing and a kill. Got a deflect block. Went back and served about 4 points in a row, and really showed what she can do.
Yeah.
And but then you go to Minnesota, and your other 2 middles are playing pretty well in that match. Because I had talked to Lourdes. I said, I think we're going to get you some action this week, and we did, but it wasn't as much as I know that I expected her to get, because she's really nipping at the heels of both those other middles right now in practice. So, but as a coach, it's a process of feeling more and more comfortable with those players based on how they're going to react in practice, and with Lourdes in the last 2 weeks, she's been a machine. She's just been working her tail off in there every day, and so she's certainly really ready to go, and I will not hesitate to pull the trigger if necessary in any match down the stretch with her, or even Restovsky, or whoever else it might be. In the backcourt right now, Ava and Brownie are both fighting for that spot. They're both playing well, and we start one, but I'm not afraid to throw the other one in there when given the opportunity, because they both have a lot of experience, and that also makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for allowing me to pull the
I don't
curtain
know if I
up.
made it very clear. It's kind of like when you're trying to get a job and they say we don't have enough experience. Well, how am I going to get the experience if I don't get a job?
Don't give me the job. Yep.
And I'm sure that's how some of these young players feel, is that, well, I just need to continually see more. And that's the thing, is if a player comes in every day and is showing you what they can do in practice is one thing. If they come in and they're not doing it every day, then you have a little bit of doubt. But I feel good. You're right. We've got really good depth. That's going to be a strength of this program for many years to come, based on the kind of players that we have recruited. And so I feel good about that. And I think you'll see some more players getting some time as this season moves on, because it's now or never.
Yes, for sure. Starting Friday night, 9 o'clock Eastern, is the first serve at Northwestern. You can watch that game live on the Big Ten Network. Listen to Kyle call it on the radio or online. And then the Boilermakers return home Sunday at 1 p.m. against the Hoosiers. Again, the Monon Spike on the line for that match. Big Ten Plus for that game and the radio.
Well, they don't need to watch that one. They need to get out here and support it. I know that all of our matches are sold out, but sold out and having a full house are 2 different things, as I've learned. And so let's use those ducats, as we like to call them here on the Dig City show, and get people out to watch, because I think that we've got 2 remarkable matches coming up this weekend that I think will be very entertaining and be very, very competitive.
Get there early and make your voices heard, Boiler Nation. That is your challenge. Coach, good luck this week.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it, and looking forward to seeing everybody out here on Sunday.
Love it. Boiler up.
Boiler up.